Hi everybody. So yesterday, Destiny Sidwell posted a new video with book recommendations that are associated with songs from the Taylor Swift album Fearless. So what I have decided to do is update my Swiftie coded TBR video that I made earlier this spring, because I am adding some of the, I'm going to talk about in this video about the books that I read in her video and the song prompts that are associated with them, and I'm going to do a wrap up of all of the books that I talked about from the original TBR, and also talk about upcoming books I will be reading from Destiny's video. So in my original video for the Swiftie coded TBR, I combined prompt lists from Rachel Catherine's videos and These Lyrics and Lines. So for DNFs, the song prompt was Betty and the title was Alex, approximately. I just didn't think their relationship in this book was very realistic. And the guy in it was very creepy. The second prompt was mean. And for this prompt, I read Carrie Soto is Back, and the reason for DNFing it was because I don't like tennis, so I had a hard time getting into this book because it's about a tennis player who comes out of retirement to play against a current player who is trying to beat her record. The next DNF is going with the book, the prompt, The Prophecy, and this book was The Awakening by Nora Roberts. I liked the setup in this book and how with her inheritance, the main character goes on a trip to Ireland, and I really liked the setting of the Irish countryside, but I had a hard time getting into the world building for the fantasy aspect of this book, so that's why I DNF'd it. The next prompt is You Need to Calm Down, an overhyped book. So there are a lot of books that I could have chosen for this prompt, but the main one that I chose to pick was The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams, and the reason why I chose it was because the relationship was not believable, and I didn't like how the character point of view shifted halfway down the page, because that made the flow of the reading experience very confusing. And I hate it when other books do that too, not just that book, but like sometimes Stephen King's books do that, and other books do that too, and I really hate that. The next prompt that goes with the DNF is If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. This was talked about on both Rachel's channel and Sarah's channel, and I can't really see the reason for its appeal, because the main character, Autumn, is whiny and obnoxious, and basically there's a spoiler at the very beginning of the book that the main male character, Finn, dies. So that's why I had to DNF that book, because of the spoiler at the very beginning. The next, that prompt was this kiss. The final kiss is Speak Now. And so for this prompt, the book that I chose for the DNF was, the book that I DNF'd was A Court of Mist and Fury, the second book in the ACOTAR series. I really loved A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I loved how it's a modern retelling of Beauty and the Beast, but I could not get into A Court of Mist and Fury because I thought there were too many sex scenes, and also I don't like violence, so the war part is not very good either. And another DNF that was not associated with the prompt was the breakup tour. So this book is by the same people who wrote The Roughest Draft, and what I did not like about this book was that I think the people who wrote it, Emily Wumberly and Austin Sidman Broca, really don't seem to like Taylor Swift, and I think this book really insults her and makes fun of her. So that's why I DNF'd it. And also, I didn't think the writing was that good. So we are going to get into the main list of prompts. The first prompt I wanted to mention was Enchanted, and the book I wanted to talk about for this prompt is Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. So this is the second book in the Rome, Kentucky series. When in Rome is the first book. Practice Makes Perfect is the second book. And the next book in this series comes out at the beginning of January, and it's called Beg, Borrow, or Steal. So in Practice Makes Perfect, we have Annie, who is the sister of Noah from the first book, and the bodyguard of Amelia. I can't remember the bodyguard's name, but basically Annie hears on, when Annie goes on a date, her date basically says that she's boring. So she employs Amelia's bodyguard to kind of teach her how to be more interesting on dates. So I really liked the prospect of that. It's kind of like Joey from Friends giving a girl who is having trouble socially with dating, with giving the girl dating advice. That's what I thought of the bodyguard character in Practice Makes Perfect. The next book is called, the next prompt is Better Than Revenge. And the prompt that goes with this, the book that goes with this prompt was Tiny Pretty Things. This book is set at a prestigious ballet school in New York City, and it's about the main girl in this book, her name is Giselle, and the other main character, I forget the second girl's name, but the second girl's name is trying to steal the part. She basically wants to take the lead role in the ballet, which is given to Giselle because she's jealous of her. So, basically, she is harassing the girl Giselle, and then she gets in trouble with the principal, and her parents get involved, and they say that that the school shouldn't press charges for the bullying, which is insane because she should have gotten kicked out of school for bullying Giselle. And I really didn't like how that book ended. The next prompt is Happy Ever After Playlist. And this book fits both the song from Taylor's version, Ours, and the song from Fearless, Superstar. And I would say that the Happy Ever After Playlist is probably my favorite book in the Friend Zone series because I love the fact that the girl in the book, Sloane, falls in love with the musician. The next prompt from this list is When Emma Falls in Love, and the book that goes with this prompt is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I agreed with Rachel's pick for this prompt because I think it fits it very well. And the thing I like the best about this book is the relationship between Nina and her little sister Kit, because it reminds me of the relationship that I have with my sister. The next book is Unrequited Love, and for this prompt we have another book by Sarah Adams called To Catch a Suitor. This is a book that is set in the Regency romance period, same time period as Bridgerton and Pride and Prejudice, and I really like the romantic build-up between these two characters because it reminded me of Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet. The next two books, ironically, are also set in Regency England. Don't Want You Like a Best Friend by Emma Alban and Never Met a Duke Like You by Amelie Howard. I have talked about Don't Want You Like a Best Friend in my previous video because the sequel just came out and I'm looking really forward to reading the sequel. Never Met a Duke Like You is a really cool book because the main character, who is the Regency princess, is neurodivergent like me. What neurodivergency is basically we have disabilities on the autism spectrum, but it's not really autism. So it was cool that this author, Amelie Howard, decided to create a character with neurodivergency, and it was interesting how she related to the other characters in the book. And I can't wait for more books in this series to see how if Vesper, the princess from the first book, appears in other books, to see how she relates to other characters. So for the next prompt, it's called The Bolter. And this prompt has two books. Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert, which I did not like. The only vibes I got from this book that were good were the aesthetic vibes of Italy, because it made me really want to go back to Italy again to visit my family. But other than that, this book was pretty underwhelming, and I like the movie better because my favorite actress, Julia Roberts, is in it. And the second book I chose for this prompt was Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. This was Abby Jimenez's new release from April. And what my favorite part about this book was the male main character. His name is Justin, and he's very sweet because he and Emma, the main female character, start a relationship because they have similar issues with their relationships not lasting a long time. And Justin is so sweet because he will send out surveys to Emma asking her what she wants to do on dates, and then he'll do exit interview type things with her, saying, how did I behave on the date? What did you like the best? What would you like improved for next time? I just think his acts of service are very sweet. And another thing I like about Justin is how sweet he is with his younger siblings, because basically his mother walks out on his family and he's left to take care of his younger sister and brother who are in elementary school. So I just really think his dynamic with them is really sweet. And I heard through the grapevine on Goodreads that Abby Jimenez is coming out with a new book next year that's the fourth book in this series. So I'm really hoping it's about Justin and Emma getting married and having a family, and how the dynamic with the siblings works out into that. The next prompt I wanted to talk about is the Clara Bow, which is the historical fiction prompt. The books that I picked for this prompt were Major Peregrine's Last Stand and The Pilot's Wife. But in addition to that, I would also like to include By Any Other Name by Jodi Picoult, which I got for my birthday last week, and I just finished yesterday. So this book is about a theater teacher who is writing a play based on Shakespeare, and it's dual POV. The present day is the perspective of the Shakespeare teacher, and the other perspective is from the character from the Shakespearean times that the main character in the book is writing the play about, which I thought was really cool. So I gave By Any Other Name 4 stars on Goodreads. And I gave the other 2 books 4 stars as well. The next prompt was Love of My Life. And for this book, I chose The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. This was her release for March, and it focuses on Lucy, who is a 24-year-old paraprofessional in a kindergarten who was an orphan. And she really makes a good connection with her student, Christopher, who is also an orphan. And she really wants to adopt him. But of course, because she's a paraprofessional aide in a kindergarten, she doesn't have the money to do that. But then, when his parents die because they overdose on drugs, the police say to him, "Oh, who do you want to go live with?" And he says, "I want to go live with Miss Lucy." And Sarah Without an H made a good point in her rant review of The Wishing Game, where she said that that's just not a realistic thing for the police to do. They would look into his records to find a family member for him to go live with. So when she was younger, Lucy was into this book series called the Clock Island series, which reminds me of this book series that my sister used to read called the Magic Treehouse series by Mary Pope Osborne. So the author who writes the Clock Island series comes out of retirement to announce he's writing a new book and that he's doing a giveaway of the manuscript of his book for the lucky winner. So Lucy and 3 other people are picked to go to the island to do the game for the giveaway. And another good point that Sarah Without an H made in her video when she did the rant review of this book was the fact that there were too many sad backstories. You have Lucy's backstory, you have Christopher's backstory, you have the backstory of the author who was supposedly gay and couldn't have any kids because he was gay and still closeted. And then a fan wrote him a letter and she drowned trying to cross the canal to get to the island or whatever. And then the illustrator of the books had a brother who had Down syndrome who really was into the books, and that's why he got the illustration job. But then he dies from medical complications. So, I agree with Sarah that the characters had too many sad backstories that didn't really need to be necessarily elaborated on. It should have just stuck with the backstory of Lucy because she was the main character. When the story gets hard to follow when you incorporate the sad backstories of the other characters, and it makes things too complicated. So Meg Schaefer came out with a new book 2 months ago called The Lost Story, which was inspired by Chronicles of Narnia. So that is on my whole list at the library, and I should be getting it soon, I'm hoping. The next prompt was Tortured Poet Society, and there are 3 books that go with this prompt: A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston, which is probably my favorite book by her because it's about an author who gets transported into the town that her romance novel is based in. And the town in this book reminds me of Stars Hollow from Gilmore Girls. Kind of like the town in the Bright Fall series by Ashley Herring Blake. So actually let me pull out my reading journal so I can share the discussion question answer that I wanted to share. If I can find it. Share the same guy, that's not it. Disability Pride Month. Here we go. So the discussion question that was asked here was, what book setting would you like to be transported to the most? And for my answer, I gave either Hogwarts from Harry Potter or the town that I just mentioned from the Bright Fall series from Ashley Herring Blake. Basically, what I like the best about Harry Potter's setting is like the gothic setting of Hogwarts. And I think it would really be like when I was first reading the Harry Potter books when I was a kid, I really liked the scene when Harry first gets to Hogwarts, because it also made me think of the scene in Annie when she first arrives at Daddy Warbucks' mansion and how like in awe she was of how big the house was. So that would be my reaction if I were into Hogwarts. And the cool thing is, in 2015, I went to Disney World for my 30th birthday. And when we had an off day from the Disney parks, we went to Universal Studios. And the people at Universal Studios really did a great job with recreating Hogwarts and the whole Harry Potter world for the Harry Potter section of Universal Studios, and I absolutely loved it. And if you have never been to Wizarding World of Harry Potter, you should go. All Harry Potter fans should go to Wizarding World of Harry Potter. The two other books that I picked for this prompt were The Bookshop on the Corner by Jenny Colgan, which is set in Ireland. And it's about like a bookstore lady who comes on hard times, so she has to she basically loses her physical bookstore and has to open a bookmobile to travel around the country with. And what I liked the best about this book was the fact that she was traveling around the country, and you really got the vibes of the Scottish countryside. And then the last book that I picked for this prompt was The 13th Tale. This book was recommended to me by Riley Marie, and the basic concept of it is it's basically the 7 husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but instead of it being about somebody interviewing somebody who is a famous Hollywood actress for a magazine article, this time the person who is being interviewed is a fairy tale author who is going into retirement. And I thought the concept of this book was really cool because portions of her fairy tale stories were interspersed into her interview, and I liked the settings of the different fairy tales. The next prompt is I Can Fix Him, and the book that I picked for this is Beach Read by Emily Henry. And basically, as the relationship between Gus and January develops in this book, basically they are two authors who meet when they're on summer vacation, and they switch genres. So, Gus is writing a romance novel about Gus is writing a regular literary novel, and January is writing a romance novel. So they take each other on these little excursions for research so they can help each other write their books. So, like, January takes Gus on all these romantic dates, like to the carnival or to the boardwalk or whatever. And this makes me think of Hull and going to the carousel. And then Gus is writing a book about cults. So basically he takes January to all of these places that are places where cults used to meet or something like that. The next prompt that I wanted to talk about was The Forgotten Dynasty. And the two books that I picked for this prompt were Heartless Hunter, which is a fairy tale book by Kristen Ciccarelli, where a witch falls in love with a witch hunter. And what I liked about this book was the fact that this couple was totally, like, unexpected to get together, but the dynamics between them are really interesting because they went from enemies to lovers, and it was a really good build-up of their relationship. And then the next book is My Lady Jane, which is part of a series of, like, modern reimaginings of historical person named Jane. And this first book in this series focuses on Lady Jane Grey, who is one of the wives of Henry VIII. So this makes me think of the book the project we were working on in a writing group I joined at the Plus Company before I moved away, because we were writing a book. We were writing a group story that was about the 8 wives of Henry VIII, kind of based on Six the Musical. And this character in My Lady Jane was one of the people that we were writing about. And the final prompt for this list is The Prophecy. And the two books I picked for this prompt were A Tempest of Tea and Where the Dark Stands Still. The Tempest of Tea was actually a DNF because I thought the character was too whiny and that there were too many different viewpoints. Too many different character POVs just made the plot hard to follow. And then Where the Dark so I loved The Dark Stands Still. Where the Dark Stands Still. It is a Polish folktale that is basically about a fairy who goes on a quest to find his royal lineage, and I just really enjoyed it a lot. So the prompts from Destiny's video that she posted a couple of days ago, the books that I have read from that video are the song that this book goes with is You Belong With Me. These are all songs from the Fearless album, which is my favorite Taylor Swift album. So I was really glad when Destiny posted this video because I love all of these songs. So the first song I wanted to talk about was You Belong With Me, and the book that Destiny picked to go with this song was To All the Boys That I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. I read this book back in February for Valentine's Day, and I was not a huge fan of it. And I think my issue with reading YA books is that I'm really too old to be reading them because the age range for these books are like high school and beginning of college, and I'm almost at the end of my 30s. I just had a birthday last week, and because of privacy reasons, I'm not allowed to say how old I am. But Lara Jean, who is the main character, into all of the boys I loved before. Basically, what she does is she writes letters to all of the guys she had crushes on, and then somebody mails them out, so all of the people end up getting a hold of them. And one of the guys she writes a letter to is her sister's ex-boyfriend, which makes things awkward. And I just thought Lara Jean was really bratty and pretentious. The next book in this video that I read was Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. This was one of the first Christina Lauren books that I read earlier this year, and I loved Macy and Elliot in the scenes where they were in the past, because it showed how their friendship built up and how both of them loved to read, and they would always get together to discuss books. I didn't really like them so much in the present day, because I kind of really felt bad for Elliot, because he really wanted to get back together with Macy so badly, and I felt like it wasn't really reciprocated. So the song that goes with is Breathe. The next book from Destiny's video that I wanted to talk about was the song is The Way I Loved You, and the book that she picked for this song was The Things That We Left Behind by Lucy Score. This is the third book in the Knock 'Em Out series. Overall, I gave this series a B+. I gave this book a B-. This was Lucien and Sloane's book, and we get bits and pieces of their relationship in the first two books, and Lucien is like probably my least favorite guy character, because he comes off as a really big jerk, but and like him and Sloane fight a lot, and that's what this song is about. The Way I Loved You is basically about a couple who are like constantly fighting with each other, but then they eventually work things out, and that's what happens with Lucien and Sloane. The next song I wanted to talk about from this TBR is Change, which is basically about people who are making a change in their society. And the book that Destiny picked two different series for this book, two dystopian series. One is Shatter Me, which I haven't read yet, but I'm going to read it eventually. And the other one is Divergent by Veronica Roth, which I read in March and April. And I really loved Divergent. My favorite book in the series was probably the third book. And my least favorite book was the second book, because that focused on the war and I didn't like all the violence. The next song that Destiny chose was Jump Then Fall. And this book is actually a book I'm currently reading that I talked about in the video that I made with Matt earlier this weekend, which I will link to below, because in that book I talk about more in detail about Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan. So if you want my thoughts on that book, please watch that video. The next book that I read from Destiny's video, the song she picked was Today Was a Fairy Tale. And the book that was chosen for this song was The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. So this was another book that Sarah, without an H, reviewed in her video. I don't remember which video it was. I think it was Giving Authors I Didn't Like a Second Chance. And in this video, she talked about how No, it wasn't. It was booktuber reading the booktuber's favorite books of 2023, and she said that one thing that she didn't like about the 7-year slip was how the relationship between the main characters, Clementine and Ewan, was too insta-lovey, and I agree with her about that. I wish that we had gotten more time to know them as a couple and that their relationship didn't seem so rushed. And a discussion question for the 7-year slip that I wanted to answer was the one about where you saw things ending. So at the end of the book, I saw Clementine traveling the world to get more recipes for the cookbook she was making with Ewan. And if I had a plane ticket to anywhere in the world, I would if I could pick any country, it would be Italy, so I could see my family, or England, because I've never been there before. And then for any place in the United States, I would pick California, because I went there when my sister won her award in 2014, but I would like to go back to there to explore it some more. I mostly want to go to San Francisco because I thought that Los Angeles was a little bit too crowded and what do you call it? The air was very not easy to breathe. And another place that I want to go back to in the United States is Mystic, Connecticut, because I was there when I was younger when my aunt used to live there. Well, technically she's my mom's cousin, who she doesn't talk to anymore, but back then she lived in Connecticut, and I really loved going to the aquarium in Mystic. And the final book that I have read from Destiny's video was, the song it goes with is Mr. Perfectly Fine, and this is another Emily Henry book. It's called Funny Story, and this was Emily Henry's new release from April. And basically the best part about this book was the relationship build-up between Daphne and Miles, the characters who are jilted by their exes because they end up hooking up when they're supposed to get married. And Miles really reminded me of Nick from New Girl, and I don't know if the reason why is because maybe Emily Henry was inspired by New Girl when she wrote this book, but I hope that's the case, because another romance book that I read that was inspired by a TV show was It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. She even wrote in her author's notes that her female main character was inspired by Alexis from Schitt's Creek, and you can tell that she was inspired by Alexis. I definitely could. So books from Destiny's video that I'm really looking forward to reading are You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogle, which goes with the song Forever and Always. Powerless and Reckless by Elsie Silver, which are from Chestnut Springs series, which go with the song White Horse and The Other Side of the Door. And the Bromance Book Club by Alyssa K. Adams, which goes with the song We Were Happy. And my top 10 favorite books from this TBR were A Novel Love Story, Beach Read, Don't Want You Like a Best Friend, Funny Story, Heartless Hunter, Just for the Summer, My Lady Jane, Never Met a Duke Like You, Summer Romance, and Where the Dark Stands Still. So I would like to thank Rachel Catherine, These Lyrics and Lines, and Destiny for coming up with these creative video ideas and inspiring me to read these books based on Taylor Swift songs. Have a good night, everybody.